Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dan Hoffman with Juniper Networks. Appreciate everybody taking their time this afternoon to hear a little bit about mobile security and such. Certainly, I would imagine everyone in this room has a smartphone or a tablet, or probably both, right? And we use them all the time. It gets real interesting that anytime you bring up mobile security, you usually get a couple different responses. Some of the responses is, yeah, it's a problem, we got to address it, and that's fine. Others are, yeah, I never really thought about it, or other people say, you're just lying, you're just scaring people and trying to do all that. So this is really about, you know what, let's just get to the facts. Let's just say what's actually going on, what do we really need to look at, what needs to be addressed, and then you all can make your own decisions. That's really the goal of what this is. So if we look at the mobile security debate that's out there, there's been some pretty harsh things that have been said. If you work for a company selling virus protection for Android, RIM, or iOS, you should be ashamed of yourself. Well, I'm not. If you read a report from a vendor that tries to sell you something based on protecting the Android, RIM, or iOS from viruses, they are also likely as not to be scammers and charlatans. That gets, that's a little personal, actually, you know, funny, though. And you know what, I wouldn't say justified, but there's certainly a lot of that going on. I can tell you as a person that's worked in security research for a long time, who also does, goes to sales meetings and things of that nature, that doesn't sell. You don't sell security by coming up and trying to sensationalize things. You really don't. You may get a little bit of attention and get your name out there, but it can backfire just as much as it is. So I don't understand why people say, oh, you're just trying to do this. A lot of it is research data. And it gets kind of funny because they say, well, of course you say that you make anti-malware software for mobile devices and do security solutions for mobile devices. Of course you're going to say that. Okay, but it's also what we do. It's also data. It's not like anybody's trying to scare anybody unnecessarily. It really isn't. We've been looking at mobile devices and security for about 9 years. You want a tough sale? Try selling anti-malware solutions for mobile devices in 2005, right? It wasn't happening. And you also couldn't lie about it. People knew it was a coming threat and things were going on, so it gets a little interesting. A couple things that happened recently, you know, this comes across as being a little bit sensationalized. Millions download a new Trojan discovered in Android market. They made kind of a big news, and then a security company had to recant itself. You know, a lot of debate went on that. Oh, here's another example of security companies just trying to scare people into using devices. Well, you know what? I doubt highly that was actually the thing. Somebody maybe jumped the gun a little bit. But there are some interesting things going on. And what I hope you get out of this presentation is to say, all right, I get it. I see what's going on there. You can make your own decision based upon the data and then act accordingly. The information I'm going to share with you is data that we get from our customers in our research, okay? It's going to be very objective data. I'm going to lay it out on the table for you. Any questions that you have about it, and any opinions that you have, feel free to just pop right in and shout out a question. I really, really hope you take advantage of that. So where we get our data, when we do our research from, we get it from system application stores such as the Android market. We get it from third-party application stores around the world. Android market's great for Android, everybody knows it, but it's not the only place where people install applications from. There's also known website repositories where people store malicious applications in the hacker websites. We get samples from partners and customers, and if we find something 0-day, we take advantage of it. So what we do is we take all this data and we process it, and then we make it available. Yes, we try to make better security products out of it because that's what we do. That's the company that we are. But we also obtain data and want to be able to present it to you. Something that I found interesting, not offensive because I didn't take it personally, but a charlatan means really, if you look at the definition, is somebody who essentially is speaking more than what they're qualified to speak about. Well, I can tell you the data we're going to present to you today wasn't just kids in their basement coming up with some ideas or some executive trying to make some money off of security. This is people who are well skilled in security, military security backgrounds, and so forth. And you know what? We do this security. So it's not salespeople coming up with these numbers. It's actually what's taking place. If we look at what the threats are, inevitably, anytime I talk about security, people say, oh, you have viruses on your mobile phone. Well, you know what? That's part of it. But that's not the only risk to mobile devices. And you really need to take a holistic approach when you're looking at both understanding the threats as well as mitigating the threats. Look at malware. People, you know, viruses, worms, Trojans, spyware, adware, you guys all know that. But what is it really to mobile devices? Well, what it really comes down to is it's not so much the viruses and the worms, it's Trojans and spyware. Pretty easy to understand too, right? You can't surf the internet, listen to commercial on the radio or TV, flip through a magazine or whatever without somebody saying download applications to your mobile device. Do it. You'll be productive, entertained. You'll be cool. You'll be fashionable. Do it. Well, you know what? Not every application is nice. That's not hard to understand, right? You put an application up there, it does something somebody doesn't know what it's going to do. It's malicious in nature and so forth. That's not inconceivable to think that happens. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about mobile malware. It's really an exercise in analyzing applications that are out there and what people are doing with them. So kind of keep that in mind. If somebody says, well, there's no viruses on mobile devices, what do you mean by viruses? Are you being literal virus that works in the traditional sense? Or are you saying there's bad things that happen on mobile devices that are application related? Because if it's the latter, there actually are, and I think you'll get that out of this presentation. There's also the threat, though, even if you're not buying into the whole malware story on mobile devices, a couple other categories of attacks, right? Direct attacks. And this could be anything from malicious SMS messages, of which every platform has been susceptible to, or virtually every platform. Attacking network devices, browser-based attacks, all that kind of good stuff. Something you need to be aware of, something that you need to be able to address. Let's also not forget about loss and theft. Very conceivable, right? Even at a conference such as this, you leave your phone or your tablet somewhere, you all get that. You all know that. Well, that's a threat, right? You can't say there aren't threats on mobile devices. You could lose it. Then what do? Also, data communication interception. I would speculate strongly that the devices that you all have right now have Wi-Fi capabilities, and if you ever wanted a good connection, sometimes you just have to go over Wi-Fi. Well, all those same types of sniffing and man-in-the-middle attacks and all that other good stuff still affect mobile devices, right? Because it doesn't matter what the device is, it's a Wi-Fi vulnerability. Big problem. Then it also gets into the category of exploitation misconduct. What are people doing with their devices? Fine, you don't have some fancy highfalutin hack, but is somebody just transferring money out of an organization from it? Is a teenager being bullied or sexting or doing something like that with it? It's about monitoring what's happening with the devices. So if you look at kind of the threats categorically, what's going on, it's more than just, well, you can't get a virus on an Android device. That's not really the point. The point is take a look at your mobile devices, find out what the vulnerabilities are, and understand where they are. And we're going to talk about each of these really in pretty good detail here. All right, so let's start with malware, because this is the big one, okay? Now, I can tell you as a guy that that ran a security research team and a product team to make mobile malware back in, a number of years ago, there wasn't a lot of threats out there. And we didn't say that there necessarily were. And even if you look at these numbers now, some people would say, well, that's not a lot. But again, you got to look at what the threats really are. At the end of 2010, we had in our library, this is not signatures, this is how many malicious applications we had in the library, just over 11,000. So this was the end of 2010, okay? This was after 9 years worth of research, okay? Doing all the things that we said before, scanning, getting all this great information from a lot of different places. We have people who have been doing this a long time, knowing where to look, okay? At the end of 2011, it was at over 28,000, okay? That's a pretty significant jump. Is that just because we discovered one day that repository that we didn't have? No, it's not. It means that the threat is actually growing. It means people are writing applications that are not nice. That's what it means. That's what mobile malware actually means.
What's the size of the sample size that the 8,000 were drawn from? So 11,000 out of how many? 28,000 out of?
Great question. So the question is, what is the sample size? Well, how is that in relative? To give you an example, our repository right now, I'll give you the 2011 numbers, is 28,472. That's what we had at the end of 2011. That was after looking at 790,000 applications. It's applicants. So the question is, was it just applications? These were applications that would be installed on a mobile device. Okay. So, whatever the percentage is that a high percentage? Is it a low percentage? Is it more? Is it less? It is. It's what it is. Okay? So somebody says there's no malware. Well, there is, and we're going to get very specific. Yes? Fantastic question. And the question was, do you differentiate between what's actually malicious and maybe something that's, let's say, suspicious or just notable, right, from a privacy perspective? Yeah, we do. And I'll tell you, that's a very big gray area there. So I'll get to give you how we do it as a team, kind of how we look at things. There's things that are not malware. There's things that are. Look, it's spyware. It hides itself. It changes the name of the application. Tries to hide processes, all that kind of good stuff, right? There's an intent of something that somebody needs to know about. But if it's a weather application that can make an outgoing phone call without the user's knowledge, isn't that a little weird, right? Yeah, we note that, and we actually categorize that as suspicious. So we're able to say, look, here's bad, Everything else is okay. And by the way, you have this comic application that can send premium SMS messages in the background. Does that make any sense to anybody? Right? This is just malicious. This does not include suspicious. So, you know, I can tell you categorizing suspicious is you know, quantifying that. It's a good idea to do it. It's such a gray area because it means so many things to other people. And to put it up there would be so subjective that it would be, you know, a lot of debate. Okay. Great questions. Please keep it up. Yes, sir.
This is basically installed applications. Is there a general range of what's was found in the field live on the wire versus what was just found on the website that could have been installed with no evidence that was?
Yeah, so if I understand, if I kind of rephrase the question a little bit, was this just found or was it installed or what's going on? Real hard data to get, really very difficult data to be able to obtain. I would say that people in the best position to be able to do that are the people with the repositories or the stores to say this is how many people downloaded, how many people did it, right? That's kind of a good way of getting it. Those numbers aren't really disclosed, unfortunately. But it's a challenge for us to get it, just fill it out. So a lot of the threats we can say, well, how many devices did downloaded that? Depends where they downloaded it from, and they have that data, and hard for us to get it. Yes, sir. Yeah. Sure. So the question was, is any proof or evidence that something happened, and then what was the impact? Yes, we do get evidence that the device has been exploited. We've referenced in the past, and is what it is. We generally see an infection rate across our customer base, and that's because that's who we get data from, right? We're a security company, and our customer base includes the largest service providers in the world, large enterprises, consumers. It's parents, teenagers. It's really a good, I think, statistically a very good sampling. And from that, we generally see an infection rate of between 2 to 3%. It could vary a little bit, but that's what we see. With that, I can tell you that we've seen an enterprise, and this was a global enterprise, very large, who has seen infection rates between 5 to 6%. That was odd, but it is what it is. Yes, sir. Sure. No, that's great. So it has an enterprise said, yes, this happened, and this is the effect that I've had on that? We haven't. Yeah. And you know, I think there's a couple different reasons for that. One is, I think knowing that an event happened is part of it. How do you even know? If you're not looking for it, how do you know that it actually happened? A lost device, maybe you can quantify a little bit better than actually malware, but sometimes it's hard to be able to quantify. And also, we get asked that a lot. We don't have a lot of companies at least being publicly announcing that kind of stuff. I will tell you, though, that I'm going to give you a specific example, and I'll note some feedback we got from service providers in this respect, and I'll be very specific in terms of scope on that. Yes, sir? Yep. Absolutely. So the question is, any data on downloading from, say, the Android market as opposed to a third-party app store? And yeah, we do, and I'm going to go over that in pretty good detail. So in terms of the amount of malware samples, I show this for, admittedly, 2 reasons. One is to show we're not the only ones seeing a rise. So you can see, for example, Juniper, we have 28,472 applications we deem malicious. Okay? Netkin, pretty close to that. 2 others, and I didn't come up here to throw anybody under the bus, but this is their published numbers. So is the threat not happening, or reimagining it, or are others pretty far behind? Others, I think, are pretty far behind. And again, I didn't want to throw anybody under the bus, so I didn't want to put on there. I also have the salt shaker up there, which means take it with a grain of salt. You know, there's a lot of ways to categorize and quantify, and, you know, it is what it is, right? But just something to keep in mind. If you look at Android comparatively, a lot of growth in Android. I'm going to be very specific on numbers here with Android as well. Over 13,000 malicious applications we found for Android. Okay, it's a lot. That's a lot of applications, I think. If you look at, and this is, there was actually a study and an analysis done on free anti-malware applications, of which you can download a plethora from the Android market right now if you wanted to. How good did they work? And they came to the conclusion that they really don't work too well. Well, if you look at the statistic there where we have over 13,000 and they have 400 samples that they publish that they have, pretty big difference. You get what you pay for, right? It's security, right? So, again, shows we're not the only ones seeing the rise in Android malware either. So it gives you a foundation. I can give you numbers all day long. Are we ranking them up? No. And here's somebody else seeing something pretty similar. Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear. Yeah, the question was would we consider path, which would take information and store, would we consider that malicious or not? And but basically what our methodology on that is there's a difference between a privacy issue, let's say, and a malware issue. And it's funny, I had a similar conversation right before this session started, and it was, look, if you download applications, hey, I downloaded this cool free app, but I don't want them to get anything out of it. I'm not going to give them my location or data, and I don't want to see any ads. I just want cool apps that I can download for free. No, you give something up, right? Somebody's got to get something out of it. The key is that knowing what you're giving up. So if I download a cool game, I'm cool with that. I'll let it know my location. Maybe I even let it know what I buy online. I don't know, whatever anybody's comfortable with. That's okay. It's about knowing what's going on. How we address that is we try the best we can to subjectively, admittedly, in our minds, think if it's malicious or not. And I'll give you an example. So if it were to hide itself, you install an application, it renames itself, and it shows a different icon, we consider that malicious. If it's a game that happens to collect some of your personal information and send it to somebody else, depends. If it's taking your emails, yeah. If it's taking some other stuff, depends on a case-by-case scenario, really. But in an instance where we wouldn't consider it malicious, we would then flag it as suspicious, and then the end user can make their end user, or I should say, or the administrator can make their own subjective opinion. All right. So kind of break this out by operating system here. If you look at the end of 2010, you can see the majority of the malware that we got was J2ME and Symbian. In fact, almost all of it. If you look at Android, less than 1% of all the malware samples we had were from Android. Okay? 1 year later, meaning at the end of 2011, almost half of what we saw was for Android. Was this because we stumbled upon a site we weren't looking at before to collect data? No, it's not. It came from multiple different places. This was a growth that we saw. It wasn't just that we started looking for it. It's not that we just magically found something that we didn't see before. We're just noting this growth. It is what it is. So it's a pretty notable change in the dynamic. If you also look at market share, Symbian was huge. I mean, huge in the world. Now almost completely disappearing in terms of new device sales. Anyway, that has an effect on what people are doing. I keep going back to, we've been doing this for a long time. If you look at Windows Mobile and you look at Symbian, there was actually comparatively some pretty good exploits out there. Actually, Symbian, some really cool exploits. I mean, you can completely take control of a phone by sending an SMS message to there, and there was a lot of phones affected by that. That's a big deal, right? And you can see how the threats kind of shrink because Symbian devices are kind of fading away. Look at this here. So what are the types of different malware that we see? We're going to be specific. I'll give you guys some concrete examples that are here. So if we look at, for example, the pie chart that's on the left, over 63% of the malware we see is spyware. Takes information, sends it to somewhere else. Could that cross over into a privacy issue as the previous question alluded to? Yeah. Is it malicious? Is it privacy? It gets muddy. It really does. But just in terms of spyware, meaning we're hiding our application, we're being clandestine, we're trying to not be found on the device, and that's the intent, over 63% of we see is what it does. And that gets really, to me, that gets concerning from a security perspective, which in some ways addresses part of the question that was before. So has anything ever happened because of this? Fine, you have this data, but has anybody experienced any data loss and quantified it and determined what the impact is? Well, how do you know you're even being affected by it? If you don't have something looking for it, do you know? I would speculate quite strongly, and actually I'd be very impressed if anybody could say, in our enterprise, every device that checks email and does different things, we know everything about it, we have control over it, and we know that it's free from malware and it hasn't been exploited and it's up to snuff with configuration, then and only then it accesses our corporate data. I'd be pretty impressed if you did that. I think you'd be very alone in being able to do that as well. So that's a problem. You got people downloading applications that's able to take things off of the device and you're not looking for it. How do you know what's going on? So this is, how much does that happen? How do you quantify that? Very difficult. But to think that it's not happening, that it isn't a target, that people aren't smart enough to do it, I don't think that's the answer either. If we break it out a little bit and we look at the pie chart that's on the right with Android, you can see that 56% of all the malware that we see for Android are fake installers, and I'll get into that in detail in a little bit. And then 44% is the rest, which a lot of it, really almost all of that is spyware. So fake installers is a problem. I'll go into a little bit of detail in a moment here. Looking at a couple more numbers, look at the increase in Android. This got real interesting real quick, okay? Last summer in the June timeframe, we had about 400 samples of Android malware. By the end of the year, and you can see come October, November, and December, it really started to skyrocket. And this wasn't, oh, we hired another guy and he found a website where we got this data from. This was, hey, we're seeing it. It's starting to happen. And I can tell you the growth numbers since then, since December, have been pretty much online with that. It's a lot. It's grown a lot.
Are you seeing that as discrete code snippets, or does somebody release, like, obviously a framework and people are just latching onto that to create malware?
You know what it is? It's more of it's applications, right? So people are writing applications. Are they kind of stealing the information from others? Yeah, they kind of are, and I'll answer that more directly in a couple slides when we start talking about specifics. But it's a good question. If you look at the rise in Android, and then if you look, I mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of market share, Google's got a lot of market share. I mean, it's a cool device, and by the way, I have a Google device right now. I'm running Android. My wife, my son, my mom, she also has an iPad that I bought for her. I'm not anti-Android. I'm just saying here are the threats that they're use the devices, but let's be realistic about what's going on, and this is what we're seeing.
Is that U.S. market share?
That is a global market share. So if we look at 2011, there was a couple notable events, and this gets, you know what, I think we're in many respects definitely in, let's say, the infancy to adolescence of mobile malware. Even though we've been doing it for a long time, it's starting to come together. There was quite a few very interesting events that took place last year. If you look in the January timeframe with Janimi, provides a sign of complexity to come, had botnet-like capabilities, okay? Did it happen? Was there tens of millions of devices under the control? Well, no, but the foundation was there, and you know what? Is it gonna happen? I think so. When? Hard to say, but the capabilities were certainly there. Droid Dream, I think, was really the first time where people said, all right, look, there was a malware incident. We know it infected devices. Somebody actually attempted to quantify the number of devices it was, and it said 50,000. I can tell you right now, I don't have a lot of faith in that number for a lot of different reasons, but somebody somewhere said it was 50,000, and people kind of latched onto that. That was a problem. This is the case, and this goes back to a question that was asked earlier. We work with service providers. Part of what we do when we analyze malware is says, just like what you guys would do, reverse engineer it. What's it doing? Where's it going? If it's spyware, it's a client going somewhere, right? There's that head end, and if you can identify that head end, IP address or URL or whatever, you can scan your network, and if you're a service provider, it's a big network, and see everything going to there. You with me? So we were able to take that information and share it with our service provider partners, and it was pretty interesting data that they had. Nobody publicly came out and gave numbers, but I can't tell you that devices were found that had it on there. You know, was it a million? No, but it was out there, and it really got their attention. They were saying, wow. So if you're a service provider, imagine this. What is your biggest asset? It's your network. It's your network. That's what differentiates you. That's what your customers use. If you can't protect that, if you can't control the data that's on there, you're in bad shape. And this was an example of where there wasn't a whole lot of control that was put there. You look at some of these other ADRD that in a February timeframe. That was actually cool because I don't think a lot of people caught on to this, but it would send HTTP requests on command. So hey, send any, boost up volume numbers and traffic numbers. That's great, but I see that and it screams distributed denial of service attack, right? I mean, that's pretty, that affects service providers, enterprises, everybody. That could be a bad thing. And then it goes on through things such as Droid Kung Fu and others, which was really quite interesting. And then it starts getting into September with Droid Deluxe. This was particularly interesting to me because this would take credentials off a mobile device and send them somewhere else. That starts changing the game a little bit, right? That's not cool at all, right? And it happened, and it was out there. And then, of course, you look at November, it has iOS code signing vulnerability. So what I'm surprised I didn't hear anybody say yet, and maybe you're thinking it is, well, that's great, you've been talking about Android, what about iOS, what about Apple? They certainly have a lot of devices, right? And I'll tell you right now, it's an interesting position I think the security market is with Apple. If you want security really on your devices, you're really dependent on them, okay? And I'm not going to bash them, but I'm going to certainly tell it how it is. I come from a military background. It's trust but verify. I trust you, but let me verify. Right now, I think there's a whole lot of blind trust being put into a lot of different places on mobile devices, and that's feedback I get from other people. It's not bashing. It is what it is. Prove it. What's going on? Give me the numbers. Show me what's going on. And I think, it's funny, I get asked all the time, well, what's better, Apple or Android? I use both. I have iPads. It's like you guys. I got everything just about you can get. Am I scared to use either? No, I'm not. But I'll tell you what, I'd rather know what's out there and be able to do something about it than not. And I think with, you look at these, this doesn't scare anybody, but there's things you can do to protect yourself. There's solutions out there that can protect it. I think it's important to recognize that. Yes, sir?
Do you have any statistics on exploits specifically targeted jailbroken devices?
We do. I don't have them handy. So the question was, do we have any statistics on exploits for that specifically attack jailbroken devices? Yes, we've seen exploits on that. It opens up the door. I don't have them handy, but we do have that. And actually, for anything that I'm not able to provide to you, as much as I'm trying to give really good statistics and so forth, and know as much as I can, is you can go to juniper.net/security, and then we have a bunch of articles. We have a bunch of good stuff on there where you can do searches for information such as that. Yes, sir. Yes. We don't get, in terms of malware, we're not getting a lot of valuable numbers out of that. If you look at Android market, how we're able to do that, and just the architecture of both Android devices as compared to Apple devices, how their app store works and so forth, we can, as an example, scan the Android market and pull down all the applications and analyze them and have it be automated and cool and efficient, all that good stuff. You can't do that on Apple. It's actually, well, we haven't figured out a way to do it yet. So if somebody has it, let me know. But I didn't hear the last part of your question.
The actual tools you're using to analyze the malware, how are you doing it? Are you doing it natively on the devices? Are you doing these in some type of VM environments? Are you doing them in the build environments? How are you analyzing the malware?
All right, so the question is, how are we analyzing the malware? I would say that depending on what it is, we analyze it by either looking at the code or loading it. I mean, just like you guys would want to do, let me load it on a device and see what actually happens. Emulator aside, we generally don't use emulators for analysis a lot.
What do you use in terms of tools? If I load something on this phone, I don't have a whole lot of access to see what it's doing outside of watching the traffic at least. You're just looking at the traffic. Is that all you do?
No, good point. No, we're not just looking at the traffic. We're looking at, when we can, we look at the actual code that's in there. We have actually a team of reverse engineers that are able to go in there and work their magic to say, all right, if I can figure out what the actual code is doing, I mean, literally look at it and see what's going on. There is the actions of doing it. You actually raised a really key point there, which is other than seeing the traffic that's going in and out, it's kind of hard to see what's going on. But that's actually a super, super key point. If you look at the biggest things, the biggest threats that we see right now, it's spyware and it's premium SMS Trojans. Spyware is spyware. Premium SMS Trojans is where you install an application and behind the scenes it's going to send a premium SMS message to kind of charge you. It's like calling a 900 number, right? She picks up on the, or he picks up on the other side of the phone, and then you charge $1 or $7 or whatever. Same kind of thing. The bottom, the common denominator with that is communication. Okay, so your point of that's all you can look at, but that's a big part of it. But it's not all we can look at. We look at that, we install it, and see what it does. And I'm not going to say that we don't ever use emulators, but nothing beats taking a device, loading it on, and seeing what's going on. All right, so what is a fake installer? We saw a lot of growth in this, right? We saw that 56% or so of Android exploits are fake installers. What are they? Well, they're kind of interesting. So imagine that you write a software program and people like it and they download it and you put it on the Android market and it's free and you make money off of advertising or not, or you're just happy doing that, okay? Then imagine somebody takes that, repackages it, puts it on a different market and says, I'm going to charge people for this. You would probably not be happy about that you're defrauded. As a consumer, you wouldn't be happy about it either because you're being defrauded. You're being told, I have to pay money to download this when I can go here to download it for free. Is that malicious? We think it's malicious. We think people should care about that. We think people are being defrauded. We think we can detect it. We can protect against it and so forth. That's what it does. What actually you see here is a fake installer that was for the Opera Mini browser, right? Fine product. Well, we were finding this on websites where they said, oh, you want to download this? You need to send, as it said, there's 3 premium SMS messages, and then you'll get the right to download it and install it. That's bad. The people who wrote the browser aren't getting anything out of that, and the consumer is being defrauded. Just not a cool situation, right? It's just not a good thing to do. Is that overtly malicious to enterprises and they need to start yelling and screaming? No, but it's not, it's something you want to know about and stop, right? Any,
Same thing as this is an easy marketplace. People put up websites that try to charge you for samples and don't use it.
yeah,
You can find it if you look for it.
absolutely. Absolutely. So so we talked a lot about the malware part, and before I get into the next segment here, let me just kind of open up any other, I appreciate personally all the questions, it's good, that's what this is all about. Any other questions about the malware before we kind of shift gears a little bit here?
Did you analyze programs that cost money or only free programs? Did you find any malware in apps that cost money?
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is do we find malware in apps that cost money and so forth? Yeah, we do.
Leveraging service provider partners today to look at applications that only send malicious requests to carriers.
So the question is are we working with service provider partners to look at applications that only send requests through the carrier network or bad stuff through the carrier network? Yes, we work with them very closely, as closely as you might expect a company like us to. And I'm not being salesy here, but look, Juniper's a networking company. We have networking stuff everywhere, right? So yeah, we talk to them. The answer is yes, but we don't limit it just to that. We actually have open exchanges like you'd think we would with them. That only goes to I wouldn't say, that only goes through specific carrier networks?
Specific carriers, but it strikes me that if I'm going to write malware and I know you're out there looking for, why bother sending it across my Wi-Fi networks, et cetera, when I know most researchers need to see to the carrier's networks? Why not write it to send my malicious request there?
Okay, that's a smart idea. Yeah, nothing's coming to mind that we've come across, but no, good idea. Somebody should do that. 56, I believe.
So how long do you think before that factor becomes something that corporations need to care about? As in, you look at spam, you make money, then it stops. So they compress. Do you have a time frame on that? You say, 6 months, a year, 2 years?
I'll answer that two very distinct ways. So the question is the fake installers, when are enterprises going to care about it, right? When is this like, all right, look, this is costing money, we need to worry about it? It has to do, I think a lot of it has to do with cost containment and all that, and but it's not just the cost of the premium SMS from the fake installer. It's the cost part of it, but it's also the customer service kind of part of it as well. If you look at it from a service provider perspective, think about it. It's a little different. If I have a problem with my laptop, I'm going to go to a lot of different places, but AT&T or Verizon or Sprint probably isn't one of them. My phone, that's who I'm going to go for. Right? Hey, any problem I have, I'm calling them. I'm just talking as a typical user would. So you start seeing enterprises and consumers worried about fake installers. I don't have a magic answer to that. Your answer would be as good as mine, to be honest with you. I will say this, though. When you start looking at things that cost money and who picks up the phone on the end, that's who actually gets the charge on that. A phone call to a service provider can cost, depending on who you talk to and what's going on, $7 to $17, okay? For a $3 fake installer or $3 worth of premium SMS messages, that's the cost that really adds up considerably. And that's why service providers are saying, look, I need to protect my network, my customer service team, and everybody else from this. And bad stuff happens is bad too, but let me just do that. So, man, your guess is as good as mine.
Do we have statistics on direct exploitation devices rather than downloading applications?
Yeah, we do. So the question is do we have statistics on exploitations as opposed to just downloading applications? Yes, I would say that the concept of direct is way lower. I mean, way lower. However, I will say this. It's in our report. I would see if I can get it. It's something like 3% or 0.3%, a very small fraction of this malware actually takes advantage of an exploit to do something. And when we see that, it's usually rooting, like it'll root it and then do something. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see any incidents where the application author was unaware of malware in their application?
Yeah, and I think you see that in the PCs when people borrow code and borrow pieces of it, and Yeah, I think you see that. I think where you see that a little bit, maybe even more as a privacy part of it, right? But absolutely from a security, I don't want to say developers are lazy, but you save time by borrowing code. We all kind of do it, right? And, who knows how good that is. So, yeah, and that's something we're going to continue. Everything you see, if I can put some kind of that thought and everything else, everything, the work that's been done in terms of exploiting PCs and so forth really carries over fairly okay to mobile devices. So the trends, I think, are going to be pretty similar on that, and we're kind of seeing that now. We look at right after all the big Melissa and I Love You and all that other stuff, how the attacks kind of went stealthy after that. And I remember Melissa, it was not, I was a sysadmin at the time, was not cool. They kind of went stealthy after that. Fine, all right, my girlfriend did me wrong, I want to make money now. And that's happening on mobile, so it's kind of screw past that. People aren't saying, hey, I want to be well known as a person who does a mobile threat. However, that can happen. Yes?
Maybe a misunderstanding, but it sounds like you're saying this fake installer stuff isn't really malware, it's really mostly just piracy and stuff.
It's, I don't think I'd dispute that. I would, so the question was, it could be piracy or, it can be categorized a lot of different ways, and that's why we think it's important to break it down, just to be honest, right? 56% is fake installers. We think it's a malicious application, doing something intending to defraud people. Could an argument be made that it isn't? I think that argument could be made. But then our numbers would go down. But that's why we break it up, man, right? All right, talk about loss and theft a little bit, and being conscious of the time here. I found these statistics actually pretty cool. So basically what we did, I mentioned the service providers, enterprises, and consumers, we're able to get data on what they do. So we have an anti-theft capability. Well, how did people use it? We found that just under 17% of people used our locate device. This means I don't know where my device is, or I'm testing to see if I can find out where my device is, and show me where it is in an online map. About 17% did it. That was pretty consistent with over years. That was pretty good. Lock and unlock were strikingly similar. Right, just under 7% people would say, I lost my device. I know it's wherever in San Francisco, I'm going to lock and go get it, what have you. So those lock and unlock. Those numbers weren't all that staggering. What really caught my attention were the last two, most notably the wipe. So if you go back 4 or 5 years ago, I lost my BlackBerry, no problem, I'll wipe and get you a new one, right? This is kind of changing a little bit, is how I read these statistics, to say, hey, you know what, I lost my device, I'm going to go get it. I'm going to recover it, not replace it. And when you see wipe, less than 1% of our customers using wipe, that's not a lot. That's good. I think that's great. I think that's an awesome number, right? And then the scream is if you have it in vibrate or what have you, and it's somewhere around here, but you don't know exactly where, you can have it have a loud audible signal or scream, as it were, and then you can go find it. So the question is do we think it's to do the employee or the phone? Yeah, it could be either. It could be either. We actually have a parental control product that you do that with kids, right? Yeah, that just better go get them. I can only speculate, though. I think it is more with the lost device, but that's just my feeling. And it's on vibrate, yeah. Yeah, so it'll start beeping really loudly, and we actually had people use it. I've honestly used it. I've honestly used it to find my son's tablet. So, and I wasn't even home. I was like in New York or something. So it was kind of fun. And it was in my office, as it turns out, at home. Wi-Fi sniffing, not going to spend a lot of time on this, but look, it's Wi-Fi. Data's flying over it. The same vulnerabilities on anything else goes to tablets and smartphones. It's a fact of life, okay? This is a sniff. This one's actually a couple years old on here. But it's still there. You look at kind of cool things like face sniff and others that come out there. That's pretty cool. It works on, it'll work on mobile devices too. We tested it. Realize that it's out there. If you're an enterprise and you got data going over Wi-Fi, realize that, protect it. Do what you got to do with it. Real quick, start wrapping this up, talk a little bit about Google's bouncer. So a couple weeks ago, Google announced that they are analyzing applications within their Android market. I think that's a good thing. Good for them to be able to do that. I don't think I think it's a step in the right direction. Debate could be said whether or not it's their responsibility. They're doing it. I think that's fine. A couple of things to keep in mind, I think, from a consumer perspective as well as an enterprise and government perspective is, well, a lot of the growth we're seeing isn't in the Android market. So if you're scanning the Android market, that's great, but that's not where we're seeing a lot of the growth. A question was raised, how much is coming from where, right? And I can tell you, we don't have the hardcore numbers back from Google as far as what we have that they've seen on their market, but I would speculate rather strongly that the vast majority is coming from third-party stores and not the Android market, okay? That being said, we know there are things on the Android market that we consider malware. How much? That's an answer we actually need to get back from them. And they're a good company. Their heart's in the right direction. And if and when we get it and we can publicly share it, we will. But the thing is this: it's great that they're scanning the Android market. Other markets are not as secure. They're not. Okay. And we go that by the statistics we're looking at. Another thing to keep in mind is our standard, meaning us as I would say security folks, is higher than theirs would be. For not bad reasons, not because we're cooler or whatever. It's just they have customers who are developers that sometimes they have to give the benefit of the doubt to. Is this malicious? I don't know. We're going to assume not until something bad happens. We're the opposite. Hey, this is, let's at least flag it as suspicious and kind of go from there. And then also is you got to still take that holistic approach. Great, scan the market. That's cool. What happens to your lost and stolen devices and what happens when they connect over Wi-Fi and what are users doing with it? It's just one piece of the puzzle. That's good that it's there. It's not a bad thing. Last thing I'll talk about is how do you actually protect yourself against an attack? What actually needs to be put into place? And I think there's a lot, right? But I think, at least from my own personal perspective, it can be broken down in 3 different areas. I'll use Droid Dream as a real classic example here. So just as you have anti-malware and security applications on your PCs, put on your mobile device. Not that hard of a concept to understand, okay? Droid Dream, we got it 0 day, which was, I tell you, as a guy who responsible for security research team, we felt pretty good about that we got that. We also share, just because of the nature of the company that we happen to be, we share that information with our RDS teams. They write their signature so we can see it when it goes across a carrier network or an enterprise network. That's cool. Catch it on the device, catch it in the network. This probably sounds very strikingly similar to what you'd want to do on your PCs, which again, what you do to protect your PCs, you also want to do for your mobile devices. And then the whole NAC part of it, only allow secure devices to connect to the network and so forth, right? So that's kind of that multi-tiered approach you can take. This is how you do it with PCs, right? Same kind of thing. This isn't brain surgery.
So with PCs, some antivirus has incredibly poor cut rates, like 20%.
Yep.
With the antivirus and malware that you're seeing on the phones, is it any more reliable?
So the question is reliability of scanning, and is it any more reliable than with PCs? I would actually say at this point it is, and that could change tomorrow. It really can. The reason I think it is we're not seeing a lot of cases where people are changing their mobile malware to bypass security. Okay, if you think about PC malware, there's a lot of it for a lot of different reasons. All right, it's out there, it's good, it's working. Oh, now we're being detected. Now we got to change it so we're not detected. And it's this constant cycle of trying to get around security fixes and the security detections. We're not seeing that yet in mobile malware because not a whole lot of people are looking for it, frankly. And plus, it's still really early. Remember, this is kind of the infancy and infancy, I would even say, of mobile security in that regard, and don't need to change it. Good question. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, on all points. And for those of you who may not be able to hear it and those that are streaming, I'm with you on a lot of that, man. I really am. So, yeah, there's steps that can happen now. So 3 key points that I got out of that. The research is more than the attacks that we're seeing so far. Yeah, I would agree. We did see a real big change though when we, you know how we saw that spike go up at in Android towards monetization. To your point, there's a lot of research, and fake installers is how people can make money. So that's what they're doing, and then it's easy. Same with premium SMS. You know how much money can be had out of that. I think we'll see. But that to me, that was saying, all right, enough research. I want money. So we kind of started to see that. You had a couple other real good points in there too. Well, but one is patching, is about patching. So we had talked prior to the show. You said, you know what, there's these devices, yeah, they're always connected, they're always on, but you're not always receiving the security updates and the security patches and so forth. I got two things, well, maybe one thing to say about that. Yeah, it's a problem. It's like on a PC. You don't fix the vulnerability, and then you don't have to worry about the exploit, right? Amen, right? Hallelujah.
Pretty much the ICS with their sense device, so all of the devices lack and do updates and
You know what? It's that. It absolutely is that. There's so many players. You have the device manufacturer. You have the operating system vendor. You have the service provider, and all these people who controls the updates. It's a mess. It's a mess. I'll tell you right now. I've had conversations. How do you do updates, and who's in charge of it? And people go, whoa. You know, they kind of take that step back before they're gonna let out a sigh. You know. Any other questions? Yes, sir. We are. Those are taking place, and when I look, I would say if you had asked me over the last 3 years where I see a growth area that's going to be, it's going to be in the browser. I would say from there. There are some. We actually documented a couple of them in our report, and there's other researchers who have done it. We do see that, and actually, I'm a little surprised we're not seeing more of that happening. Part of the conversation we had earlier was a lot of devices. Vulnerabilities in the browser, or let's just say in third-party applications that are on the device, or applications on the device being used as a mount to exploit. That's going to happen. Why hasn't that happened? You know, maybe it isn't. We haven't found it. Maybe it's because it's just easier to just write an application and somebody will download it and you take advantage of it. You know, I don't know, but absolutely, positively an area I think 2 years from now we'll be having a different story on. Maybe even sooner. Yes, sir. Interesting point. So the point was in drawing the parallels between the two. When do people say, all right, I'm really going to do it in earnest? Stop looking at PCs for text, go to mobile devices because that's where everything is. You know, an argument could, I'm with you. I think an argument could be made that the mobile device is actually more personal, used for email and more intimate. Maybe, maybe not. I think that crossover, I got to think it's happening now just because of what's occurring. I can tell you right now, if I lost my laptop, it'd be unfortunate. It is encrypted, so you know, all that kind of good stuff. It'd be unfortunate. I would actually probably for me that wouldn't be a bad thing. But I have my phone. That's what I care about, is because that's like, oh my God. When I pay my credit card, it's with my phone because I travel a lot. When I do email, it's on there. When I update Facebook, it's on there. When I take pictures of my children, it's on my phone. So you know what? There's a lot that goes on there, and I think we are seeing that shift. I really feel, I've been doing this for a long time. We're seeing that shift towards mobile devices. And you know, this is going to be a super interesting year. So hopefully next year we'll have a similar session. We'll say, hey, all those good questions we had, what actually happened? What is and the gentleman does not work. I got 2 minutes. Gentleman does not work for Juniper. That's not a planted question. So what do we do to protect it? It's basic. You know, oddly enough, it's actually this. So we do the endpoint. I was running there. When we talked about the threats to the malware, direct attack, data communication, interception, we actually have product capabilities that mesh with that. That's what we do. Sure. So we have the anti-malware capability, analyzing the applications and files and all of that kind of good stuff, seeing what's bad, what's malicious, suspicious, and what's okay. So we have that part of it. We have the firewall capabilities on mobile devices, kind of protect against direct attacks. SSL VPN to protect data flying through the air. A bunch of anti-theft capabilities. We touched upon a lot of them: lock, wipe, locate, backup, restore, that kind of stuff. And in terms of exploitation and misconduct, monitor what's on the device. And that can be everything from applications installed to what people are doing, what pictures they're taking on the devices, and so forth. That's on the device, and then of course we have our edge stuff with the NAC and secure access, as well as our network products. So we take that holistic kind of look at that, and I think that puts us in a pretty cool position. What, I'm sorry.
That is the best one. Your guys' stuff is really sounds
Well, you got it. No comment. Yes, sir. Let me, no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't, and that gets into the whole area of privacy and suspicious and otherwise. And our mantra is let the user know what's going on in a case like that, and then they make a decision what's going on. That's a huge, we could talk another hour about that.
Does your product say, hey, carrier IQ's on the phone and it's suspicious? Does it at least make the user aware that that's there?
We don't.
It's not a vendor like licensing agreement, like did Carrier IQ talk to you guys?
I'm not going to get into specifics on that, but let me just say this, that detecting, there are certain limitations with detecting things on any platform or mobile device, and that's where it does differ on PCs. You have many ways to detect things on a PC. On a mobile device, it's a lot different what you have available, and to really do a super good job at it, sometimes it's not possible. So just so somebody says, we have this capability of doing it, doesn't necessarily mean they're actually doing it in a good way. It just, okay. I'm with you. Yeah. All right. I really appreciate it, guys. Great questions. I had a bunch of questions at the end, but you all asked them, so that was good. Anything else you have afterwards, let me know. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.